All right, today we're looking at What Real People Think, written by Frank Sadler in the 2008 practice exam from TSSM. Now the finding, of course, the issue background is here, and with this one, finding the contention is pretty easy. It's pretty much stipulated in the subheading here. Young male drivers are the most likely to be killed or injured on the roads, unsurprisingly given their poor attitudes and false beliefs. So obviously Frank Sadler wants these young male drivers to change their attitudes on the road. And sometimes people do get confused about the target audience for this one, but he makes it very clear down here. I'm talking to you, the young guns. Okay, so he's talking directly to the young male drivers. Now, his piece here is full of attacks towards the young male drivers, so we could say that he's using a derogatory tone. If we look at derogatory, you'll find it meaning showing a critical or disrespectful attitude towards them, so he's really talking down to them. There's another one down here you could use, which is denigratory. No. Let's see. No, I wouldn't use that one. I'd stick with derogatory. Okay, back to the piece. If we look at the heading, we want to focus on this word real, okay? So he's really emphasizing this notion of real people. Now, there's common perception that young people, are all into keeping it real, being down to earth, not being fake. So if it's suggesting here that they're not real people and that this article is going to be filled with the opinions of real people, that directly implies that these young male drivers are behaving in a really fake or pretentious attitude, which wouldn't really appeal to them. So perhaps they might like to listen to what would be a more down-to-earth attitude so that they can continue on keeping it real. Now, if we have a look at the accompanying image here, I'm pretty sure that's the front end of a BMW, and during the article, Frank Sadler specifically attacks the young male's choice of vehicle. And they talk about it needing a hefty price tag. So up here, of course, BMW is quite an expensive vehicle. It's also quite a fast, high-performing vehicle. So that directly correlates with that part of his argument. And we can see here that the choice of this fast, expensive vehicle has resulted in what we can only assume to be a fatal accident. Some things emphasize the fatality of this accident, and that's the fact that the cabin here of the vehicle is so exposed. So you can see there's really not much between the passengers or the driver and the outside world. So we could kind of assume that they've borne full brunt of this particular impact, and it was probably a fatal crash. So this is a very sobering picture for the reader, and they may begin to consider the effects of their actions. We can also see a sort of rather plain looking, normal looking car in the background here, and so that one is not really smashed up like the BMW. So this contrast might suggest that if they were to choose, a more practical vehicle, they wouldn't end up in such a situation. Now, in the opening, he calls himself a crusty old curmudgeon and a traitor to his gender. So he insults himself. What we could call this is a preemptive defense. So he attacks himself preemptively before the readers even have a chance. So that kind of diffuses any opportunity for the readers to start conjuring insults in their minds towards this writer because he's already gone ahead and done it. Also, the fact that he blatantly calls himself a traitor to his gender illustrates to the readers that the message he is about to put forward is more important than the bro code. It's more important than, sticking up for your fellow men. So therefore, this going against group loyalty, which most people value, would make us realize that, well, this message must be pretty important if it's, he's willing to be a traitor in order to get it across. Now, over here in the phrase, no other group comes close, it reminds me of the phrase, nothing comes close, like it's something that's the winner, it's the best, it's the number one. But what are these boys winning at? They're winning at being the most damage to themselves, other road users, and to friends and family. Now, this is not something that young people would want to win, not a race they'd like to win. And when you don't want to win a race, you slow down, which is exactly what Frank Sadler wants his particular readership to do. Now down here we have this attack self-absorbed sociopaths. Now a sociopath has no ability to feel empathy for anybody else. And it's pretty much, recognized as being, a rather serious personality defect. So in order to avoid bearing the brunt of this attack, the readers might like to show a little bit more empathy on the roads so that they're not called sociopaths. Again, that works with this diabolical, which we often associate with being evil. In order to avoid these sorts of attacks and names being placed upon them, these drivers might consider their driving behaviours. Over here, shiny bits all over it. Now, when we have things like, ooh, shiny bits, it can often be contrasted with, not contrasted, but associated with simple-minded creatures. Like there are some birds that like to collect shiny things and put them in their nests. So in here, again, it's another attack. And it's suggesting that these drivers are very simple-minded. So in order to exert their intelligence, they might like to refute this by making wiser choices with their vehicles. Now, throughout the piece, we have some repetition of this phrase, wrong, and then it comes down to here, wrong again, and wrong yet again, and then when will you get it right? So if I was teaching somebody and I said to them, wrong again, wrong yet again, when will you get it right? It shows a building sense of frustration, and they would probably feel a bit insecure and feel, a bit dumb or unintelligent because they keep getting things wrong. So by having this repeated throughout the piece, it's meant to make the readers feel like that. So in order to get things right, of course, they need to change their driving behaviour. Now, one thing that obviously is, a primary concern for young men is the appeal of the opposite sex. So Frank Sadler taps into that by refuting what they might think of the opposite sex being, impressed by their choice of vehicle with these quotes of, "What a tosser. There's someone with more money than sense. Isn't he a bit too old to be playing with toys?" So with this, it's interesting that he has this direct quotes happening. So perhaps when these young males are driving their cars later on, they might see a girl looking at them and start to feel a greater sense of insecurity. Instead of thinking that, she's impressed by the car, they might hear these words echo in their mind. There's someone with more money than sense. And so that building insecurity will make them think twice about drawing excessive attention to themselves. We have a metaphor here, coffin on wheels, and that metaphor suggests that the car is very strongly associated with death. So by referring to it not as a car but as a coffin on wheels, we can see this direct association with death, and next time the drivers look at their cars, they may think about the possibility of death. Now, here's some hyperbole, exaggeration, that delays you for a nanosecond. So nanosecond is a super fast period of time, very short period of time. So this exaggerates, of course, but it's meant to really emphasize just how impatient these young men are. And so that will be a stronger message than just saying delays you for a while. Delays you for a nanosecond would make them feel that perhaps they are extremely impatient. Now, we've got demerit points stacking up and also money the insurance companies want. So particularly with the money, that's an appeal to hip pocket, but both of these techniques are for the boys who don't feel a lot of empathy. So if they don't care about anybody else, they might care about themselves. They might care about losing their license if they use up all their demerit points, and of course they don't want to part with their money. So by mentioning these things, the writer appeals to self-interest and particularly to the hip pocket nerve, so that the ones who aren't so persuaded by you're hurting your friends, you're hurting your family, will likely be persuaded by you're hurting your wallet. Now, we have Traffic Accident Commission statistics over here, so that's that use of authority. So it's not just this guy, Frank Sadler, who's saying that their attitudes are going to cause them problems. The Traffic Accident Commission statistics actually prove, in a credible way, that there is a direct correlation between young males and incidents on the road. So, this phrase here, why can't you be trusted to do this on your own? This question is one that parents might ask young children. I can't trust you to leave you in the house on your own with your sister, or I can't trust you to leave you around the chocolate cake that I just cooked. So, in this way, the male readers are going to be reminded of these sorts of, parents sort of saying, why can't you be trusted to do this on your own? And so in order to assert their independence and to show that they're young adults, they will be more inclined not to act like children. Now, Frank Sadler, near the very end of the piece, gets very frank, very direct by using cliches. So cliches are normally well-known, well-understood expressions. Do yourself and everyone else a favour is one of them. Get with the program. So being very direct, upfront, using colloquial and common language that the general reader can understand, he can make it very clear to the young male drivers that what he wants them to do is get with the program, which is to change their attitudes and drive like they are supposed to.